I'm really excited.
There's some fans that are still holding out hope for Bellamy and Raven to...
Bellamy and Raven?
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say Bellamy and Clark, but okay.
Did I get that wrong?
Yeah, what would I say to them? Or what do I think of that?
I think I got it mixed up.
Oh, right.
Your options just as Clark.
Bellamy and Clark, holding out hope for Bellamy and Clark. I think that Bellamy and Clark to a degree, and not necessarily, but definitely Bellamy is most vulnerable and open with his feelings with Clark. That is when he really shows her what he's truly feeling, and I think that happened first season, episode 8, where he was having hallucinations, and so was she. They ended up having to kill someone together, and they sat at the tree, and he could open up to her and show her the guilt that he was feeling. So they established that relationship, and in terms of that, to have a relationship with that, like with somebody else, it's quite a special thing. So in terms of holding out hope for them, I mean, yeah, I have hope that they'll be able to still rekindle and have that relationship where there is an open and honest and trustworthy relationship, because they do work well together. But in terms of anything beyond that, that's not up to me. Yeah.
Now we're in season 3 where he's getting also Bellamy who's making his own decisions and really kind of thinking for himself and figuring out.
Yeah.
Do you see that being developed further?
Look, I kind of see that in a different perspective. I think that Bellamy in season 1 is very much as you described, but I felt like in season 2, for me, especially playing it, it was about him finding peace and finding redemption from what he had done in season 1, where he threw away the radio and he killed all those people inadvertently, and that was a selfish act on his behalf to save his own skin. So I felt like season 2, he goes on a suicide mission, he puts his life at risk because he feels like he needs to make it up to these people, these kids, who he has played a huge part in killing their parents. So he owes it to them to do that. He feels like he should give his life for that. And at the end of season 2, I feel like I feel that Bellamy felt that he had done that. He'd done what he needed to do. And so back in season 3, he's back on that same front where he's like, we need to live this way and make, aggressive actions in order to establish our lifestyle. And that's why Pike's ideology is aligned with Bellamy's. So whether he does, I think that it's always a back and forth, and he is always, making mistakes and makes some decisions that aren't necessarily right. But as the season goes along, he'll be challenged with, bigger questions than just his actions. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that and going forth from there.
When they first landed, Bellamy was kind of a leader in the group, and Clark kind of continued that in her own way, but he has kind of fallen now where he's being moved between different camps of people. Is he going to have that moment where he kind of comes back to being in charge himself?
I don't necessarily think that, and I could be wrong, I am wrong a lot of the time, but I don't necessarily think that Bellamy had that taste of leadership season 1, and then he wanted to run away, episode 8. And then he was forced back into that leadership position. And, as someone who was older than the other delinquents there, I felt like he felt like it was his responsibility to protect them. You have to keep in mind that he is the only one out of the delinquents or the younger crew that has actually raised a child and looked after her. He has a different perspective on life than any of those kids ever had. So he does feel that responsibility, but I don't necessarily think that he wants to be a leader. He needs that guidance, like Clark, like Payne or Pike. He'll do what he needs to do, and if that means he's a leader, then so be it. I don't think he sees himself as a figurehead, just trying to do what's right. Yeah. It's hard to ignore some fans online. I'll be honest about that. But, for me, when I'm working as Bellamy and we're doing that, it's all about how I interpret the script and how Jason interprets the script and how I feed off other actors. You know, the beauty with the sci-fi and the 100 is, you know, we're put in such a dramatic world, but it's all about playing the truth and the truth of the character. So it's really just about interactions and what you think is right or wrong. And whether Bellamy's ideas on that change or blur or are grey, it's just about being truthful to him in that moment. So, you know, fan reactions don't necessarily come into play when I'm playing Bellamy, though I don't think it's so far removed from being a human being to be able to change your mind and, you know, and then want to change it back. You know, I think we've all been in situations where, you know, you've done something you wish you couldn't have, and, you know, I use those experiences to fuel into Bellamy. But his decisions are much bigger, like killing 300 people, you know. So,
what advice would you have to modern day young people who are maybe about to graduate college and try to figure out what they want to do with their lives?
You know, I always think taking some time off to, you know, try to reassess what really makes you happy and then pursue that. I mean, I went to university for geological engineering. I went through almost a year of that and realized that's not what I wanted to do. It's hard to figure out what actually makes you happy, and I think that's, you know, in that pursuit of happiness is a question that you're going to ask yourself through any stage of life. I do feel there's a lot of pressure put on young students to know the answers at such a young age, and I would say to them, it's okay if you don't know right now. You know, you can always figure that out.
Will Bellamy and his sister get back together again since they're at loggerheads?
You know, it's funny. Once again, it's that they have a relationship that no one else has on the show, and that's being a sibling, you know. And I'm the youngest of four, and I fight with my siblings all the time, but at the end of the day, you know, you were born into that family, and that is your blood. Whether they, like, I mean, I'm turning 32, and me and my brother still have fights and all that kind of stuff, and I imagine we're going to be best friends at some point, but, you know, and there's a falling in and out. Whether to try and encapsulate that in 13, 16 episodes for these two, I don't think it necessarily has to happen that way, but there is an understanding between the two of them that they are family, and that's all that's left of the Blake. So I think, you know, in those terms, and they're very broad, but they will always have to find a way, you know, to be Blakes, you know, because they are intrinsically linked, like no other characters on the show. Yeah.
And there's going to be obviously some sort of epic showdown between the Grounders and Sky Crew before the end of the season. Maybe what's coming up with that?
Look, I wouldn't be so sure if I were you, to be honest. That's what I would say to you, that you can never be too sure about who the epic showdown's between. Yeah. No.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.